The flames were already eating through the west wall when Caleb kicked down the door and saw her trapped beneath the fallen beam, the billionaire heiress who'd crashed into his life 3 weeks ago, who'd taught his daughter to laugh again, who'd made him believe he could trust someone after years of guarding his heart like a wounded animal. Outside, armed men were closing in through the blizzard. Inside, the lodge he'd built with his own scarred hands was collapsing around them. He had maybe 60 seconds to choose. Save the woman he'd sworn he'd never fall for, or protect everything he'd already lost once before. This is a story about survival, betrayal, and the terrible cost of letting someone past your walls. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Caleb Hunter woke at 4:30 in the morning to the sound of wind tearing at the cabin shutters like something desperate to get inside. He lay still for a moment in the darkness, listening to the particular violence of a Wyoming winter storm, the kind that could bury a man's truck in 3 hours and his mistakes in 3 minutes. The thermometer outside his bedroom window would read somewhere south of 0. It always did this time of year. He pushed himself out of bed, his back complaining the way it had every morning since he'd fallen off a roof 2 winters back. 32 years old, and his body already kept a ledger of every stupid decision he'd ever made. He pulled on thermal underwear that had seen better decades, jeans worn soft at the knees, and a flannel shirt his daughter had picked out for his birthday, red and black checks, warm enough to matter. His reflection in his bathroom mirror looked like a man who'd stopped caring what he looked like around the same time he'd stopped expecting anything good to happen. Dark hair needed cutting, jaw needed shaving, eyes needed sleep he wasn't going to get. The house was silent except for the storm. Caleb made his way down the narrow hallway, pausing at his daughter's door like he did every morning. Emma slept with her mouth open, one arm flung over her stuffed bear, her brown hair tangled across the pillow. 8 years old and already too smart for the hand life had dealt her. He watched her breathe for a moment, then kept moving. The kitchen was cold. He'd let the fire die overnight to save wood, which meant it would take an hour to warm the place back up. He started coffee first, truck stop brand in a pot old enough to vote, then knelt in front of the wood stove and began the small ritual that kept them from freezing. Newspaper, kindling, a log split down to size. The match flared in his palm. He held it to the paper and watched the flame catch, spread, consume. Outside, the storm howled like something wounded. Caleb poured coffee so strong it could strip paint and stood at the window looking out at his property. 40 acres of mountain wilderness he'd bought with money he didn't have, a dream he couldn't afford, and a wife who'd left him before he'd finished signing the mortgage papers. The lodge sat 100 yards from the main cabin, unfinished, skeleton-framed, a monument to everything he'd promised and failed to deliver. He'd built it himself over 3 years, working weekends and late nights, imagining families gathered around a fire, kids playing in the snow, people paying money to escape their lives and step into something better. Stupid. The whole idea was stupid. He'd refinanced twice, skipped meals to pay contractors, ignored every warning sign that screamed he was drowning, and now the bank wanted their money in 14 days, or they'd take everything, the lodge, the land, the cabin where his daughter slept, all of it. Caleb drank his coffee and watched the snow fall sideways across the dark trees. He'd fix the Peterson cabin today if the storm let up, replace the rotted deck boards they'd complained about, patch the leak in the roof, make his $200 and pretend it was enough. Tomorrow he'd drive into town and beg the bank for another extension he wouldn't get. Then maybe he'd come home and explain to Emma that they'd have to move again, start over again, lose everything again. The coffee tasted like ash. By 6 o'clock, the sky had shifted from black to the color of old bruises. Caleb pulled on his work coat, canvas duck worn nearly through at the elbows, and his boots and gloves. He'd let Emma sleep as long as possible. School didn't start until 8, and she was smart enough to get herself breakfast and catch the bus without him hovering. He left a note on the table in his rough handwriting. Gone to Peterson's. Back by 3. Love you. Dad. The truck started on the 3rd try. Caleb let it warm up while he scraped ice off the windshield with the edge of a credit card he'd maxed out 3 months ago. The heater wheezed and rattled. The radio played static. He backed out of the driveway and pointed the truck toward the mountain road that wound through the forest toward the tourist cabins scattered across the territory like afterthoughts. The snow was coming down harder now, visibility maybe 50 feet. Caleb drove slow, his hands light on the wheel, reading the road through memory more than sight. He'd driven this route 1,000 times, knew every curve, every buried culvert, every place where the shoulder dropped off into nothing. He was 2 miles from the Peterson property when he saw the tracks, fresh tire marks cutting off the main road, plowing through the snow toward the steep embankment that fell away into darkness. Caleb slowed, squinting through the windshield. Expensive treads, wide stance, something big. His gut tightened the way it did when a situation was about to go bad. He pulled over and climbed out into the storm. The tracks led straight to the edge and disappeared. Caleb walked to the rim and looked down into the ravine. There, maybe 30 feet below, a black SUV was buried nose first in a snowbank, steam rising from its crushed hood. The rear window was intact, no movement inside. "Hell," Caleb said into the wind. He stood there for a moment doing the math. Could be nobody in the vehicle. Could be someone already dead. Could be someone hurt and bleeding out while he wasted time thinking about it. He looked back at his truck, then down at the wreck, then made the decision that would ruin everything. He climbed down. The slope was steep and slick, the snow deep enough to swallow his legs to the knee with each step. Caleb half slid, half fell the last 10 feet, and caught himself against the side of the SUV. Mercedes, GLS 600. He didn't know cars worth a damn, but he knew money when he saw it. This thing probably cost more than his entire property. He wiped snow from the driver's window and looked inside. A woman sat behind the wheel, slumped forward against the deployed airbag, her dark hair spilling across her face. Expensive coat, diamond earrings catching the gray light, blood on her temple. Caleb yanked on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Frame warped in the crash. He moved to the passenger side and tried that door instead. Stuck. He braced his boot against the vehicle and pulled harder. The door shrieked and gave way. "Hey," Caleb said, climbing inside. "You alive in there?" The woman didn't respond. He reached across and pressed 2 fingers to her throat, feeling for a pulse. It was there, fast but steady. She stirred at his touch, her eyes fluttering open. Blue eyes, sharp and cold, even half-conscious. She looked at him like he was something that had crawled out of the woods. "Who the hell are you?" she said, her voice hoarse but edged with command. "The guy trying to help you," Caleb said. "You're hurt. We need to get you out of here." "I'm fine." She tried to sit up and immediately winced, pressing a hand to her ribs. "You're not fine. You drove off a cliff." "It wasn't a cliff. It was barely a hill. You need a hospital." "No." The word came out sharp. She looked at him with sudden focus, her expression shifting from dazed to calculating. "No hospitals. No police. I just need somewhere to wait out the storm." Caleb stared at her. "Lady, you're bleeding from the head." "I said I'm fine." She fumbled with her seatbelt, her hand shaking. The buckle wouldn't release. She hit it with her palm, once, twice, frustration cracking through her control. "Get this off me." Caleb reached across and popped the belt free. The woman immediately tried to climb out of the seat and nearly collapsed. He caught her by the arm, steadying her. "Easy," he said. "You might have a concussion." "I don't have a concussion. I have a deadline." She pulled away from him and gripped the door frame, breathing hard. Up close, she looked younger than he'd first thought, maybe 30, maybe less. Beautiful in that polished, untouchable way that came from money and privilege. Her coat probably cost what he made in 6 months, but her eyes were wrong. Too hard, too hunted. "What were you doing out here?" Caleb asked. "Driving. In a blizzard, on a mountain road, at 6 in the morning, San. Is that illegal?" "It's stupid." She turned those cold blue eyes on him. "Thank you for the assessment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to make a phone call." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a cell phone with a shattered screen. She pressed the power button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again, harder. Still nothing. For a moment, something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or something close to it. Then it was gone, replaced by that same icy control. "Perfect," she said quietly. "Look," Caleb said, "I've got a truck up on the road. I can take you into town, get you checked out. I'm not going to town." "Then where are you going?" She looked at him for a long moment, and he got the distinct impression she was deciding whether to lie. Finally, she said, "Nowhere you need to worry about. Lady, you crashed your $100,000 car into a ravine in the middle of nowhere. Either you're running from something or you're running to something. Either way, It's my problem now because you're on my land. Your land. She said it like she didn't believe him. 40 acres. Most of it useless, but it's mine. He gestured up toward the road. My truck's up there. My cabin's 10 minutes east. You can warm up, clean that cut, figure out your next move. But we're not standing in a snowbank having a debate about it. She studied him, and he could see her mind working behind those eyes, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she nodded once, sharp and dismissive. Fine. 1 hour. Then I'm gone. Sure, Caleb said, though he didn't believe her. Getting her up the slope was harder than getting down. The woman, she still hadn't told him her name, was unsteady on her feet, trying to hide how badly her ribs hurt every time she took a breath. Caleb ended up half carrying her the last 15 feet, her arm around his shoulders, her weight pressing against him. She didn't thank him, just climbed into the passenger seat of his truck and stared straight ahead while he brushed snow off his coat and got behind the wheel. The drive back to his cabin was silent except for the heater's rattle and the wind beating against the windows. Caleb glanced at her a few times. She sat rigid, one hand pressed to her side, her jaw tight. He didn't ask if she was okay. She'd made it clear she didn't want his concern. When they pulled up to the cabin, she looked at it like she'd just been sentenced to prison. "This is it?" she said. "This is it. It's very rustic. It's warm and it doesn't leak. That's all I've got." She didn't move, just sat there staring at the small wooden structure with its crooked porch and smoke coming from the chimney. Caleb wondered what she was comparing it to. Mansion? Penthouse? Somewhere so far removed from this life that she couldn't even imagine it. "You coming?" he asked. She opened the door and stepped out into the snow. Inside, the cabin was warmer, but not by much. Emma had left her cereal bowl on the table and her backpack by the door. Caleb heard the bus rumble past outside. 8 o'clock, right on schedule. He'd missed seeing her off. That hollow feeling opened up in his chest again, the one that reminded him he was failing at the only thing that mattered. The woman stood in the middle of his kitchen looking around like she'd landed on a different planet. She took in the sagging couch, the wood stove, the dishes in the sink, the broken blind on the window. Her expression didn't change, but he saw judgment in every line of her face. "Bathroom's down the hall," Caleb said. "There's a first aid kit under the sink. Clean yourself up. I'll make coffee." She nodded and disappeared down the hallway without a word. Caleb stood alone in his kitchen listening to the water run, the old pipes groaning. He had no idea who this woman was or what she was running from, but every instinct told him she was trouble. The expensive kind. The kind that didn't just leave, it exploded and took everything with it. He should drive her into town, drop her at the hospital. Let someone else deal with whatever mess she'd brought to his mountain. But he didn't move. Just started another pot of coffee and waited. When she came back, the blood was gone from her face and her hair was pulled back. She'd cleaned up well, looked almost human now instead of like something dragged from a wreck. She sat at his table without asking and folded her hands in front of her like she was about to chair a board meeting. "Thank you," she said. Not warmly, but at least she said it. Caleb poured 2 mugs of coffee and set one in front of her. She looked at it, then at him. "You have tea?" "No." "Almond milk?" "It's black coffee or snow, your choice." She picked up the mug and took a careful sip, her face barely hiding the disgust. Caleb almost smiled. He sat across from her and drank his own coffee, waiting. She'd talk eventually. They always did. "I'm Evelyn," she said finally. "Caleb?" "Caleb what?" "Just Caleb works fine." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that information away. "I need to stay here for a few hours. Maybe until tomorrow. I can pay you." "I don't want your money." "Everyone wants money." "I want to know why you're running." Her expression went cold again. "That's none of your business." "You crashed on my property. You're sitting in my kitchen. That makes it my business." She set down the coffee mug with a sharp click. "I don't owe you an explanation." "Then I don't owe you shelter, right?" They stared at each other across the table. Caleb watched her eyes calculate again, running numbers, measuring angles, deciding if she could afford to tell the truth. Finally, she looked away, out the window at the storm. "I'm avoiding some people," she said quietly. "What kind of people?" "The kind who don't like taking no for an answer." "Ex-boyfriend?" "Family." Caleb leaned back in his chair. Your family chases you through blizzards? My family does a lot of things. She turned back to him, and for the first time he saw something raw in her face. Fear. Real fear. Look, I don't expect you to understand. I just need a place to stay out of sight for a little while. Then I'll be gone, and you'll never hear from me again. What happens if these people find you here? They won't. But if they do? She didn't answer. That told him everything. Caleb rubbed his face, feeling the stubble rough under his palm. He should say no, should tell her to figure out her own problems somewhere else. He had enough trouble without adding hers to the pile. But there was something about the way she'd looked at him when she said family, like the word tasted bitter in her mouth. He knew that feeling, knew what it meant to run from the people who were supposed to protect you. One night, he said, you stay out of sight, you don't bring trouble to my door, and you're gone by tomorrow morning. Agreed? Evelyn nodded. Agreed. Good. He stood and carried his mug to the sink. I've got work to do. There's food in the fridge if you're hungry. Don't answer the door. Don't touch the phone. And stay away from the windows. Why? Because if someone's looking for you, they're going to check the houses on this mountain. And the less they see, the better for both of us. She watched him pull his coat back on. You're leaving. I've got bills to pay. In a blizzard? Bills don't care about the weather. He grabbed his toolbox from the corner. Lock the door behind me. I'll be back by 3. What if something happens? Nothing's going to happen. But if it does, yeah. Caleb turned and looked at her straight on. If something happens, you deal with it. I'm not your bodyguard, Evelyn. I'm just a guy who didn't leave you bleeding in a snowbank. He walked out before she could respond, pulling the door shut behind him. The cold hit him immediately, sharp and clean. He stood on the porch for a moment, breathing hard. Stupid. He was being stupid. This woman was going to bring hell down on his head, and he'd just invited her in and offered her coffee. But he couldn't take it back now. Caleb climbed into his truck and drove toward the Peterson cabin, his mind already chewing on the problem. One night. He could handle one night. Then she'd be gone and life would go back to its normal rhythm of slow disaster. The storm got worse as the morning wore on. By the time Caleb reached the Peterson property, the snow was falling so thick he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. He worked fast, replacing boards on the deck, his hands clumsy in the cold. The wind cut through his coat like it was made of paper. His thoughts kept drifting back to the woman sitting in his kitchen, Evelyn, with her expensive clothes and her careful lies. He finished the Peterson job by noon and sat in his truck with the heater blasting, trying to feel his fingers again. His phone buzzed. Text from the bank. Final notice. Payment due. December 15th or foreclosure proceedings begin. He stared at it until the screen went dark. 14 days. He'd been counting them like a man counting down to execution. Caleb drove back toward home, taking the mountain road slow. The visibility was getting dangerous. He almost didn't see the sedan parked on the shoulder near the turnoff to his property. Black, nondescript. Windows tinted. He slowed as he passed it, looking for plates. Out of state. Wyoming tags were orange and gold. These were blue and white. Not local. His gut tightened. He kept driving, checking the rearview mirror. The sedan didn't move. Maybe nothing. Maybe just someone pulled over to wait out the storm. But his instincts were screaming at him the way they had in the wreck that morning. Trouble. He made it home by 2:30. The cabin looked quiet, untouched. Caleb parked and grabbed his toolbox, his eyes scanning the tree line out of habit. Nothing moved. He climbed the porch steps and opened the door. Evelyn was standing at the kitchen window, her back to him, staring out at the storm. She turned when he entered, and he saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands were clenched at her sides. "You saw them," she said. Not a question. "The car on the road? Yeah. They're looking for me." "Who are they?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. It matters if they're sitting a quarter mile from my house. I said I'd be gone by morning. I'll leave now if that's better." Caleb set down his toolbox. "You can't drive. Your vehicle's totaled. Then I'll walk. In a blizzard? You'd be dead in an hour. That's not your problem. Stop saying that." He moved toward her and she took a step back, her eyes going hard and defensive. Caleb stopped. "Look, I don't care who you are or what you did, but you're not leaving in this weather. That's not negotiable. You don't understand? Then explain it to me. She turned away again, her arms wrapping around herself. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then quietly, "My name is Evelyn Sinclair." The name landed like a punch. Caleb stared at her back. "The Sinclairs, the hotel family. Yes, you're that Evelyn Sinclair, the one who disappeared 6 months ago." "I didn't disappear. I left." "Same thing when you're worth $1 billion. Tom." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I'm not worth anything. The company is, and they want me back to complete a merger that will make them richer and me." She trailed off. "It doesn't matter what it makes me." Caleb processed this. He remembered seeing something on the news months back. Society heiress vanishes after refusing arranged marriage. Family offers reward. He'd thought it was tabloid garbage, rich people problems. Now that problem was standing in his kitchen. "Who's in the car?" he asked. "Security contractors. My father hired them to find me. And if they do, they'll take me back." Her voice was flat, empty, and I'll be stuck in a marriage designed to merge two business empires. I'll spend the rest of my life smiling at cameras and signing documents and pretending I chose any of it. "That's what you're running from? A marriage?" Yeah. She spun around, her eyes flashing. "You think I'm being dramatic? You think this is some spoiled rich girl running away from her responsibilities? I have spent my entire life being controlled, managed, packaged, and sold like a product. This merger isn't about love or partnership. It's about power and money, and men deciding what my life is worth. So yes, I'm running, and I'll keep running until I find something they can't take back." The anger in her voice was real, raw. Caleb recognized it because he'd felt it himself, years ago, standing in a different kitchen while his wife packed her bags and told him she'd made a mistake marrying someone with no ambition. "Okay," he said quietly. "You stay tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. What if they come here? Then we tell them we haven't seen you. You'd lie for me?" "I'd lie to keep trouble off my property. That's not the same thing." She studied him, and some of the hardness in her face softened. Not much, just enough to make her look almost human. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." The rest of the afternoon passed in tense silence. Caleb kept watch through the windows while Evelyn sat at his table, her hands wrapped around a mug of terrible coffee she didn't drink. The black sedan never moved, just sat there on the shoulder like a predator waiting for its prey to move. At 3:15, Emma's bus rumbled past. Caleb tensed, watching it disappear down the road. 5 minutes later, he heard her footsteps on the porch. The door opened, and his daughter burst in, snow dusting her jacket, her cheeks red from the cold. "Dad!" She saw Evelyn and stopped. "Oh, who's this?" "This is Evelyn," Caleb said carefully. "She had car trouble. She's staying for dinner." Emma looked at Evelyn with the frank curiosity of an 8-year-old. "You're pretty." Deceased. "Thank you," Evelyn said, and Caleb heard surprise in her voice. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" "No." "Oh." Emma shrugged and dropped her backpack. "We're having spaghetti for dinner. Dad makes it every Thursday. It's okay, but he uses too much garlic." "I like garlic," Evelyn said. "Then you'll love it." Emma grinned and headed toward her room. "I've got homework. Call me when it's ready." "What?" She disappeared down the hall, leaving them alone. Caleb looked at Evelyn and found her staring at the doorway where Emma had vanished, something unreadable on her face. "She doesn't know to be suspicious of strangers," Evelyn said quietly. "She knows. She just doesn't see the point of being afraid all the time. That's dangerous." "Yeah." Caleb moved to the stove and pulled out a pot. "But it's better than the alternative." He started dinner while Evelyn watched from the table. The rhythm was familiar, water boiling, sauce simmering, the small domestic rituals that held his life together. Emma came back out halfway through and set the table without being asked, chattering about her day at school. Evelyn listened, and Caleb noticed something strange. She looked almost envious. They ate together at the scarred wooden table, steam rising from their plates. Emma dominated the conversation, asking Evelyn 100 questions: where she was from, what she did, why she was in Wyoming. Evelyn answered carefully, giving away nothing important, but Emma didn't notice. She just kept talking, the way kids do when they're desperate for adult attention. Caleb watched Evelyn across the table and saw the careful mask start to crack. She smiled at something Emma said. A real smile, not the cold performance from earlier. Her shoulders relaxed. She took a bite of spaghetti and nodded like it wasn't half bad. For a moment, sitting there in the warm kitchen with snow falling outside, it almost felt normal. Then headlights swept across the window. Caleb's head snapped toward the glass. A truck was pulling into his driveway. Not the black sedan, something bigger. It stopped, engine idling. He stood slowly, moving toward the door. "Stay here," he said to Evelyn. "Dad?" Emma looked worried now. "It's fine, Em. Just stay at the table." Caleb stepped out onto the porch. The truck's door opened and a man climbed out, tall, broad-shouldered, expensive coat. He moved like someone used to people getting out of his way. Behind him, a second man emerged from the passenger side, younger, harder, the kind of muscle that worked security for people who could afford the best. The first man walked to the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at Caleb with cold assessment. "Evening," he said. His voice was smooth, professional. "Sorry to bother you. We're looking for someone. Young woman, dark hair, driving a Mercedes SUV. You seen anyone like that around here?" Caleb kept his expression neutral. "No." "You're sure?" "We found her vehicle abandoned about 2 miles from here. She's injured and confused. Her family's very worried." I said no. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You mind if we take a look around?" "Yeah, I mind. This is private property. We're just trying to help. Help somewhere else." The younger man moved forward, his hand resting on his belt. The first man held up a hand, stopping him. They stared at each other. Caleb on his porch, the two men in his driveway. The moment stretched out, dangerous. Finally, the first man smiled. "Fair enough. We'll keep looking. But if you do see her, there's a substantial reward, $25,000, for information leading to her safe return." He pulled out a business card and set it on the porch railing. "Think about it." He turned and walked back to the truck. Both men climbed in. The vehicle reversed out of the driveway and disappeared into the storm. Caleb stood there until the taillights were gone. Then he picked up the business card and went inside. Evelyn was standing by the table, her face pale. Emma looked between them, confused and frightened. "Dad, what's happening?" Caleb closed the door and locked it. "Nothing, sweetheart, just lost tourists." "They weren't tourists," Emma said. "No, they weren't." He looked at Evelyn. She was staring at the card in his hand. "How much?" she asked quietly. $25,000. She closed her eyes. "They'll be back." "Yeah," Caleb said. "They will." That night, Emma went to bed asking questions Caleb couldn't answer. Why were those men looking for someone? Was the lady in trouble? Were they in trouble? He tucked her in and lied with a straight face, told her everything was fine, just some confusion, nothing to worry about. She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. 8 years old, and already she knew when adults were feeding her garbage. When he came back to the kitchen, Evelyn was standing at the sink washing dishes. It surprised him, not just that she was doing it, but that she looked like she didn't quite know how. She held the sponge wrong, scrubbed too hard in some places and missed spots in others. A woman who'd probably never cleaned anything in her life trying to be useful. "You don't have to do that," Caleb said. "I know." She didn't stop. "But I'm staying in your house, eating your food, putting your daughter at risk. The least I can do is wash a plate." He leaned against the counter and watched her work. "Those men aren't going to stop looking." "No." "So what's your plan?" She rinsed a glass and set it in the dish rack. "I don't have one. That's not good enough." "I know that too." She turned off the water and faced him, her hands dripping. "I thought I could disappear, just vanish and start over somewhere they'd never think to look. I was wrong. My father has resources I didn't account for. He'll find me eventually. It's just a matter of time. Then why run?" "Because the alternative is worse." She dried her hands on a towel, her movements sharp and frustrated. "You have a daughter. Would you let someone force her into a life she didn't choose? Marry her off to a man she doesn't love because it's good for business?" Caleb thought about Emma growing up, some stranger trying to control her future. His jaw tightened. "No." "Then you understand." "I understand you're scared, but fear's got a way of making people stupid. You can't just run forever. Hey, watch me. You crashed your car in a blizzard. You're injured. You're broke. I'm not broke. Fine. You're rich and terrified, which is somehow worse. Point is, you need a better plan than hiding in my cabin and hoping they give up. Evelyn crossed her arms. What would you suggest? I don't know, but sitting around waiting for them to kick down my door, isn't it? They stood in his small kitchen, the space between them charged with tension. Outside, the wind had picked up again, rattling the windows. Caleb could hear Emma's clock ticking in the other room, counting down to something neither of them could stop. I'll leave tomorrow, Evelyn said finally. Early. Before Emma wakes up. You'll never see me again. Where will you go? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. She looked at him like she was trying to figure out what he wanted from her. Caleb wasn't sure himself. Maybe he was tired of watching people run. Maybe he'd done enough running himself to know it didn't solve anything. Or maybe he just saw something in her eyes that reminded him of the man he used to be before life beat the hope out of him. There's a town in Montana, Evelyn said quietly. Small, remote. I have some money hidden there. Enough to disappear for real this time. How far? What? But she must bolt. 6 hours, if the roads are clear. They won't be. Not for days. Then I'll wait. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She gripped the counter behind her like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I'm good at waiting. Caleb doubted that. Rich people weren't good at waiting. They were good at demanding and expecting and getting exactly what they wanted when they wanted it. But he didn't say that. Just nodded and moved toward the wood stove to bank the fire for the night. You can take Emma's room, he said. I'll sleep on the couch. Where will she sleep? With me. Won't be the first time. Evelyn opened her mouth like she was going to argue, then closed it. Thank you. Stop thanking me. Makes it sound like I'm doing you a favor. Aren't you? No, I'm keeping trouble contained until it's safe to let it go. She smiled at that, small and bitter. Is that what I am? Trouble? Lady, you're a Category 5 hurricane in expensive shoes. Now go to bed before I change my mind. She left without another word. Caleb heard the bedroom door close, then silence. He stood alone in his kitchen, the fire crackling low, his mind churning. $25,000. That was the number sitting in his head like a stone. $25,000 would save his property, would give Emma stability, would mean he didn't have to spend every waking moment terrified of losing everything again. All he had to do was make a phone call. He looked at the business card on the counter. Clean white cardstock, professional lettering, a number he could dial right now and end this whole mess. He picked it up, his thumb running over the embossed logo. His phone was in his pocket. It would take 10 seconds. Caleb walked to the wood stove and dropped the card into the flames, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. Then he pulled a blanket off the chair and stretched out on the couch that was 6 inches too short for his frame. He stared at the ceiling and listened to the storm try to tear his house apart. Sleep didn't come easy. Morning arrived gray and bitter. Caleb woke to the smell of coffee and sat up, disoriented. Emma was already awake, sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal and a library book. Evelyn stood at the stove, dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, attempting something that might have been scrambled eggs. The pan was smoking. You're burning them, Caleb said. I know. She jabbed at the eggs with a spatula. They stuck to the pan in yellow chunks. I don't cook. I can tell. Emma giggled. Evelyn shot her a look that wasn't quite irritated, wasn't quite amused. You want to try? No thanks. Dad's eggs are better anyway. Thanks for that, Em, Caleb said, getting up. He took the spatula from Evelyn and nudged her aside. Move, before you burn the house down. She stepped back and watched him salvage what he could. The eggs were ruined but edible. He split them onto 3 plates and they ate breakfast in uncomfortable silence. Emma flipping pages of her book, Evelyn pushing food around like she was trying to solve a puzzle. School today? Emma asked. Yeah. Caleb checked the window. The storm had passed, but the roads would be bad. You might miss the bus. I'll drive you. Can Evelyn come? Both adults looked at her. Emma blinked, innocent and hopeful. She's got things to do, sweetheart, Caleb said carefully. Like what? Adult things. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting it. Emma huffed and went back to her book. Evelyn was watching her with that same strange expression from yesterday, like she was seeing something she'd never expected to want. After breakfast, while Emma got ready for school, Caleb pulled on his coat and went outside to warm up the truck. The temperature had dropped overnight. Everything was ice and frozen air that hurt to breathe. He was scraping the windshield when he saw it, fresh tire tracks in the snow leading toward his property. Not from the road, from the forest. Someone had driven through the trees during the night, circling his cabin, checking sightlines. Caleb's stomach dropped. He followed the tracks with his eyes until they disappeared into the woods. They were being watched. He finished with the windshield and went back inside. Emma was ready, bundled in her winter gear. Evelyn stood by the window, staring out at nothing. "Stay away from the windows," Caleb said quietly, "and keep the doors locked." She turned. They came back. "Looks like it. Maybe I should go now, before what? Before they grab you the second you step outside?" He shook his head. "You stay put. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Caleb, just stay inside." He didn't give her time to argue. Emma climbed into the truck and they drove down the mountain road toward town. She was quiet for the first few minutes, unusual for her. Caleb glanced over. "You okay? Is Evelyn going to leave?" "Probably. I like her." "You just met her." "So? I like her anyway." Emma kicked her feet against the seat. "She's sad. I can tell." "How can you tell?" "She smiles, but her eyes don't, like when you talk to the bank people on the phone." Caleb's hands tightened on the wheel. 8 years old and too damn perceptive. He didn't know if that was a blessing or a curse. "Sometimes adults have problems kids can't fix," he said. "I know that, but maybe she just needs someone to be nice to her. Maybe." "Are you going to be nice to her?" "I'm letting her stay in our house. That's pretty nice." Emma considered this. "Yeah, but you could smile more. You look scary when you don't smile." "Thanks, Em." She grinned. "You're welcome." Oh, he dropped her at school and watched her run through the snow toward the entrance, her backpack bouncing. She turned at the door and waved. He waved back. Then she was gone, and he was alone in the truck with his thoughts and the growing certainty that everything was about to get worse. On the drive back, Caleb took a detour past the place where Evelyn's SUV had crashed. The vehicle was gone. Someone had pulled it out during the night, probably the same people who'd circled his cabin. They were eliminating evidence, covering tracks, getting ready to make a move. He drove faster. When he got home, the cabin door was standing open. Caleb's heart kicked into his throat. He killed the engine and grabbed the tire iron from behind the seat, moving fast toward the house. The door swung loose on its hinges. Inside, furniture was overturned. Drawers hung open. Someone had torn through the place looking for something. "Evelyn?" His voice cut through the silence. No answer. He moved through the cabin, room by room, the tire iron raised. Emma's room, empty. His room, ransacked. The bathroom, nothing. He came back to the kitchen, and that's when he saw the blood. Just a few drops on the floor near the table, dark and fresh. "Evelyn!" He was shouting now. "I'm here!" Her voice came from outside, behind the house. Caleb rushed out the back door and found her standing in the snow, holding a broken piece of firewood like a weapon. Her lip was split, blood at the corner of her mouth. Her hands were shaking. "What happened?" He grabbed her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "2 men. They broke in about 10 minutes after you left." Her words came fast, clipped. "I hid in the closet, but they found me. One of them grabbed me. I hit him with the fireplace poker and ran. Where are they now?" "Gone. They left when you pulled up." Caleb scanned the tree line, saw nothing. But they were out there, watching, waiting. "Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine." She pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "I told you I should leave. Now look what's happened. Your home is just a house. Houses can be fixed. But Emma isn't here, and neither are you, starting right now." He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the truck. "We're going to the lodge." "What lodge?" "The one I've been building. It's a mile up the mountain, remote, harder to find." He opened the passenger door and practically shoved her inside. "Get in." She climbed in without arguing. Caleb went back to the cabin long enough to grab supplies, clothes, food, the shotgun he kept in the closet and hadn't fired in 2 years. He threw it all in the truck bed and climbed behind the wheel. The lodge sat at the top of his property where the trees broke into a clearing with a view of the valley below. Caleb had spent 3 years building it by hand, pouring every dollar and every ounce of hope into a dream that was supposed to save them. Now it was just a skeleton. Exterior walls complete, roof on, but the inside still unfinished. No electricity. No heat except a temporary wood stove he'd installed for working through winter. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, and right now that was all that mattered. He parked behind the building where the truck wouldn't be visible from the road. Evelyn climbed out and stared up at the structure, her expression unreadable. "You built this?" "Most of it." "Why?" "Because I was stupid enough to think I could turn it into something that mattered." He grabbed the supplies from the truck bed. "Come on, we don't have much time." Inside, the lodge was cold and hollow, their breath fogging in the air. Exposed beams overhead, plywood floors, plastic sheeting over half the windows. Evelyn walked through it slowly, running her hand along the rough-cut timber. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. Caleb set down the supplies. "It's unfinished. It's still beautiful. You can see what it's supposed to be." She turned to him. "What happened?" "Money happened, or the lack of it. I refinanced twice to buy materials, took on extra work, did everything right. But the market dried up, and nobody wants to rent luxury cabins in the middle of nowhere from a guy with no reputation. Now the bank's coming for it in 2 weeks. How much do you owe?" 35,000. Might as well be $1 million. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's nothing. Not to you, maybe." "I could, don't!" Caleb's voice came out harder than he meant. "I don't want your money." "Why not? It would solve your problem." "Because I don't take charity. Especially not from people who are going to disappear the second it's convenient." She flinched like he'd slapped her. "That's not fair." "Fair? You're running from your own family because they want to control your life, but you think throwing money at me is going to fix mine? I'm drowning, Evelyn. And money's not a life raft, it's an anchor. It ties you to people, to debt, to expectations you can't escape. So no, I don't want it." "Then what do you want?" I want to figure out how to save my daughter's home without selling my soul. Is that too much to ask?" Fools. They stood facing each other in the cold, empty lodge, their words hanging between them like accusations. Evelyn looked away first. "I'm sorry," she said. "You're right. It's not my place." Caleb exhaled hard. "Look, I didn't mean..." "Yes, you did. And you're not wrong." She walked to the window and stared out at the forest. "I've spent my whole life with money-solving problems. It's the only tool I know how to use. But it doesn't fix anything real, does it? Just covers up the cracks so you don't have to look at them." He didn't have an answer to that. They spent the next hour making the lodge livable. Caleb started a fire in the wood stove while Evelyn found blankets and old tarps to block the drafts. It wasn't warm, but it was better than freezing. He set the shotgun by the door and checked the sight lines from the windows. Anyone coming up the access road would be visible for at least 200 yards. It would have to be enough. "Now what?" Evelyn asked. "Now we wait. Emma gets out of school at 3. I'll pick her up and bring her here. We stay out of sight until the road's clear, then you head to Montana like you planned." "What about those men? They're not going to stop." "I know, but they can't search forever. Eventually they'll move on." "You don't believe that?" "No," Caleb admitted. "I don't. Evelyn sat on an overturned crate, her shoulders slumped. The cut on her lip had stopped bleeding, but it looked painful. She touched it absently, then dropped her hand. "My father won't stop," she said. "He doesn't know how. When I was 16, I wanted to study environmental science. He told me business school or nothing. I fought him for a year. He cut off my allowance, my friends, everything. Finally, I gave in. Went to the school he chose, studied what he wanted, dated who he wanted, became who he wanted. And I told myself it was fine because at least I had security, right? At least I'd never struggle." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out security is just a prettier word for prison." Caleb sat down across from her. "What changed?" "I found documents, hidden files on his computer about the merger. I thought it was just business at first, but then I kept reading. He was planning to bulldoze an entire rural community to build a luxury resort. Families who'd lived there for generations, gone, just erased. And when some of them tried to fight back, he had lawyers bury them in lawsuits until they lost everything. Homes, land, futures, all of it gone so he could build another monument to his ego. You tried to stop him. Why? I threatened to go public. He laughed, said nobody would believe me, said I was too weak to follow through. Her hands curled into fists. So I stole the evidence, copied everything, and ran. I figured if I could get far enough away, I could find someone to help expose it. But he found me first. And now, she gestured vaguely at the empty lodge. Now I'm hiding in an unfinished building with a stranger who has every reason to turn me in. I'm not turning you in. Why not? $25,000 would save this place. Because you were right earlier. Emma deserves better. And if she's going to grow up in this world, she needs to see that some people still choose doing the right thing over doing the easy thing, even when it costs them. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? Something shifted in her expression. Softened, maybe, or just broke under the weight of too many years pretending to be someone she wasn't. She wiped at her eyes quickly, like she didn't want him to see. Thank you, she said. For what? For not being like everyone else. Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Just stood and checked the fire and tried not to think about the fact that he'd just committed himself to protecting a woman he barely knew from people with resources he couldn't fight. The hours dragged. Around noon, Evelyn found a notebook in the supplies and started writing. Notes, ideas, sketches. She showed them to Caleb reluctantly. What's this? He asked. A business plan. For the lodge. If you're going to save it, you need more than hope. You need strategy. He looked at the pages covered in her neat handwriting. Revenue projections. Marketing angles. Partnership opportunities with local outfitters. It was thorough, professional. The kind of thinking he'd never had time to learn. You did this in an hour? I have a degree in business administration and nothing else to do. It's not that impressive. It is to me. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. It's just numbers. Numbers are easy. It's people that are hard. They worked together for the next few hours, Evelyn outlining strategies while Caleb pointed out what was realistic and what was fantasy. She learned fast, adapted her ideas when he explained the realities of running a business on a shoestring budget, found creative solutions he'd never considered. By the time he had to leave to get Emma, they'd filled 10 pages with plans that might actually work if he survived the next 48 hours. I'll be back in an hour, Caleb said, pulling on his coat. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. I know the rules by now. Just making sure. He drove down the mountain road with his gut churning. The black sedan was back, parked at the same spot as yesterday. Two men sat inside, watching. They didn't try to stop him, just watched. Caleb kept driving. Emma was waiting outside the school with two other kids, all of them building a lopsided snowman. When she saw the truck, she said goodbye and ran over, climbing in with snow on her mittens. Hey, Dad. Hey yourself, how was school? Boring. We had a substitute who didn't know anything. She buckled her seatbelt. Are we going home? Not yet. We're staying at the lodge tonight, like camping. Her eyes lit up. Really? Can we make a fire and tell scary stories? We can make a fire. The stories might have to wait. Is Evelyn there? Yeah. Good. Emma settled into her seat, satisfied. I want to show her my rock collection. Caleb almost smiled. His daughter had her priorities straight. They stopped at the grocery store on the way back. Basic supplies. Enough for a few days. Caleb paid with his nearly maxed credit card and tried not to think about the bill that would come later. When they pulled up to the lodge, Evelyn was waiting at the door, her face tight with tension that melted into relief when she saw them. You're okay, she said. We're fine. Caleb carried the groceries inside, but they're still watching the roads. I counted 3 vehicles. 3. That's more than yesterday. Yeah, they're escalating. Emma pushed past them both, oblivious to the tension. Evelyn, want to see my rocks? Your rocks? I collect them. I have 43 different kinds. She dug into her backpack and produced a Ziploc bag full of stones. This one's quartz. This one's granite. This one's just cool looking. Evelyn knelt down and examined the collection with surprising seriousness. That's impressive. Have you identified them all? Most of them. My dad helped. Your dad seems helpful. He is, but he's also sad a lot. Emma said it matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. He tries to hide it, but I can tell. Caleb felt his chest tighten. Evelyn glanced at him, then back at Emma. Why do you think he's sad? Because my mom left and we don't have enough money and he thinks I don't notice. But I do notice. I'm not a baby. No, Evelyn said softly. You're definitely not a baby. They spent the evening together in the half-finished lodge, eating sandwiches in front of the fire. Emma talked non-stop, moving from rocks to school to her friend Sarah, who had a pool and had invited her over next summer. Evelyn listened like every word mattered. Caleb watched them both and felt something shift inside him, something dangerous and unwanted. Hope, maybe. Or just loneliness disguised as something better. After Emma fell asleep on a pile of blankets, the adults sat by the fire in silence. The wood stove ticked and settled. Outside, the temperature kept dropping. She's wonderful, Evelyn said finally. Yeah, she is. You're lucky. I know. Do you? She looked at him. Because from where I'm sitting, you seem pretty determined to punish yourself for things that aren't your fault. You don't know what's my fault. Yeah. I know you're not responsible for your wife leaving. I know you're not responsible for the economy tanking. And I know drowning in debt doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. Easy for you to say. Is it? Her voice sharpened. You think my life is easy? You think having money protects you from pain? I've spent 30 years in a cage made of gold, and I'd trade it all for one day of what you have right here. What I have is about to disappear in 2 weeks. Then fight for it. Use the plans we made. Find investors. Rebuild. Do something other than sitting around waiting to lose. With what resources, Evelyn? I'm broke. I'm blacklisted with every bank in the county. And now I've got armed men stalking my property because I made the mistake of helping you. She flinched. I'll leave tomorrow. First thing. That's not what I... Caleb rubbed his face. I'm not blaming you. I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting and losing. I'm tired of watching my daughter grow up in poverty because I can't figure out how to stop failing her. You're not failing her. She adores you. She deserves better than adoration. She deserves stability. She deserves a father who hasn't given up. Evelyn stood, her eyes bright with anger or tears or both. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who built this entire lodge with his bare hands, who raises a brilliant, kind, fearless little girl on his own, who risks everything to help a stranger, even when it costs him. That's not failure, Caleb. That's heroism. It's stupidity. It's the same thing, and it's the only thing worth anything in this world. She walked away before he could respond, moving to the far side of the lodge where Emma slept. Caleb sat alone by the fire, her words echoing in his head. Heroism. What a joke. Heroes didn't lose their homes. Heroes didn't spend every night lying awake doing math that never added up. Heroes didn't feel like they were drowning in slow motion while their daughter watched. But maybe, heroes kept fighting anyway. He woke to the sound of Emma laughing. For a moment, still half caught in sleep, Caleb thought he'd dreamed the last 2 days. Then he opened his eyes and saw the rough timber beams overhead, felt the cold air on his face, and remembered where they were. He sat up on the makeshift bed he'd thrown together and looked toward the sound. Emma and Evelyn were huddled near the window, their heads close together, whispering. Emma held something in her hands, looked like paper, and Evelyn was showing her how to fold it. Origami, maybe. His daughter's face was bright with concentration, her tongue caught between her teeth, the way it always was when she was learning something new. You have to crease it really sharp, Evelyn was saying. Otherwise it won't hold the shape. Like this? Perfect. Now fold it again here. Caleb watched them for a moment, something twisting in his chest. Emma hadn't looked that happy in months, maybe longer. And Evelyn, she looked different too, softer. The hard edges she wore like armor had smoothed out, And for the first time since he'd met her, she looked like someone who might actually want to be wherever she was. He stood and the floorboards creaked. Both of them looked up. "Morning," Emma said cheerfully. "Evelyn's teaching me how to make cranes. Look." She held up a lopsided paper bird. "That's great, sweetheart." "It's not great. It's terrible. But she says I'll get it better if I practice." "She's right about that." Evelyn folded the paper she was holding with quick, precise movements and handed a finished crane to Emma. "Practice this one. I'm going to help your dad with breakfast." Emma nodded and went back to her folding. Evelyn stood and followed Caleb to the small camp stove he'd set up in what would eventually be the kitchen. She kept her voice low. "She woke up an hour ago. Couldn't get back to sleep. I hope that's okay." "It's fine. She's an early riser." He pulled out a pan and eggs from the cooler. "You didn't have to entertain her." "I wanted to. She's good company." "Better than mine?" "Much better. She doesn't spend all her time brooding." Caleb almost smiled. "Fair point." They made breakfast together in companionable silence. Eggs that Evelyn didn't burn this time, toast made on the camp stove, instant coffee that tasted like punishment. Emma ate like she'd been starving, talking between bites about a project at school, something about ecosystems. Caleb listened with half his attention while the other half stayed focused on the windows, watching for movement outside. "Dad, are you listening?" "Yeah. Ecosystems." "You're not listening. I asked if we could go to the library this weekend. We'll see." "That means no." "It means we'll see." Emma sighed dramatically and went back to her eggs. Evelyn caught Caleb's eye across the table, and he saw understanding there. She knew he couldn't promise his daughter a trip to the library when he didn't know if they'd still be here this weekend. The look passed between them quickly, then she turned to Emma. "Tell me more about your project," Evelyn said. "What ecosystem are you studying?" Emma brightened and launched into an explanation involving food chains and predators and something about decomposers that Caleb only half followed. Evelyn listened like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever heard. Maybe it was. Maybe when you grew up in boardrooms and ballrooms, an 8-year-old school project felt revolutionary. After breakfast, Caleb sent Emma to gather more firewood from the covered pile outside while he and Evelyn cleaned up. The moment his daughter was out of earshot, Evelyn's expression changed. "We need to talk," she said. "About?" "About what happens next. I can't stay here forever, and the longer I do, the more danger I put you both in." "I know that." "Then let me go. Today. Now. Before this gets worse." Caleb set down the pan he was scrubbing. "And go where? Your car's totaled. The roads are being watched. You'd make it maybe 5 miles before they grabbed you." "That's my problem. It stopped being just your problem when they broke into my house." His voice came out harder than he meant. He took a breath. "Look, I get it. You want to protect us. But running blindly into a trap isn't protection. It's suicide. And I'm not letting you walk out of here to get caught just so I can feel better about myself." "This isn't about you feeling better." "No. It's about you feeling guilty. There's a difference." Okay. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, looked away. "I don't know what else to do." "Neither do I, but we figure it out together or we don't figure it out at all." "Why?" She turned back to him, and her eyes were fierce. "Why do you care what happens to me? I'm nobody to you, just some rich girl who crashed into your life and made everything worse. You want the truth?" "Yes, because Emma likes you. And if my daughter thinks you're worth protecting, then that's good enough for me." Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, then quietly, "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "That's depressing. Welcome to my life." Emma came back with an armload of wood, her cheeks red from the cold. She dumped it by the stove and brushed off her jacket. "There's a truck coming up the road." Every muscle in Caleb's body went tight. "What kind of truck?" "I don't know. Just a truck. It's moving real slow." He grabbed the shotgun and moved to the window. Through the trees he could see it, a dark pickup crawling up the access road, maybe a quarter-mile out. Not the security contractors from yesterday. This one was older, more beat up, local plates. "Stay here," Caleb said to Evelyn. "Keep Emma away from the windows." "Who is it?" "I don't know yet." He went outside, the shotgun loose in his hands but ready. The cold hit him like a wall. He positioned himself on the lodge's unfinished porch and waited. The truck came closer, finally pulling into the clearing and parking 20 feet away. The engine shut off. The driver's door opened and a man climbed out. 50-something, weathered face, work clothes. Caleb recognized him. Dale Brennan. Owned the hardware store in town and 20 acres on the other side of the mountain. Caleb, Dale said, his hands visible, non-threatening. Didn't mean to spook you. Caleb lowered the shotgun but didn't set it down. What are you doing out here, Dale? Heard some things. Wanted to check on you. What kind of things? The kind where expensive trucks with out-of-state plates are cruising around asking about your property. The kind where your cabin got torn apart yesterday and you didn't call the sheriff. Dale took a few steps closer. You in trouble? Nothing I can't handle. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting. Dale studied him, then nodded slowly. All right, but if you need help, you know where to find me. My boy's got friends who don't mind standing watch if things get complicated. I appreciate it. That girl you're hiding, she worth the trouble? Caleb's jaw tightened. How do you know about her? Boy sperm. Come on, this is a small town. Someone crashes a $100,000 car and disappears. People notice, especially when her picture's been on the news for 6 months. Dale shrugged. I'm not judging, just saying you might want to think about what you're risking here. I have thought about it. And it's none of your business. Dale smiled, but there was no humor in it. Fair enough. Watch yourself, Caleb. Those men asking around, they're not the friendly type. He climbed back in his truck and drove away, leaving Caleb standing in the cold with his thoughts churning. If Dale had recognized Evelyn, others would too. It was only a matter of time before the wrong person made the wrong phone call and this whole situation exploded. When he went back inside, Evelyn was standing by the fire with her arms crossed. Emma sat on her blanket pile, folding paper cranes with single-minded focus. Who was it? Evelyn asked. Neighbor. He knows who you are. Her face went pale. Did he? No, but he could have. Caleb set the shotgun down and faced her. We're out of time. Either you disappear right now or we find a different solution. What kind of solution? I don't know, but hiding isn't working. Emma looked up from her origami. Why doesn't Evelyn just tell everyone the truth? Both adults stared at her. She blinked, innocent and confused. What truth, sweetheart? Caleb asked carefully. About her dad, about the bad things he did. Emma went back to her folding. In my books, the good guys always win when they tell the truth. Maybe she should try that. Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Evelyn. She was staring at Emma like his daughter had just solved an equation that had been written in a foreign language. Out of the mouths of babes, Evelyn said softly. That's not a plan, Caleb said. That's wishful thinking. Is it? What if she's right? Evelyn started pacing, her mind clearly racing. I've been running because I thought hiding was the only option, but what if I stop hiding? What if I go public with everything I know before they can drag me back? They'll bury you. Your father has lawyers, resources. He has those things because people are afraid to stand up to him. But what if I'm not afraid anymore? She stopped pacing and looked at Caleb. I have the evidence, documentation of fraud, land theft, bribes, everything. It's been sitting in a storage unit in Montana this whole time because I was too scared to use it. With good reason. The second you surface, they'll come for you. Oh, they're already coming for me. At least this way I control the narrative. You control nothing. You're one person against an empire. Then help me. The words came out quiet but forceful. You said we figure this out together, so help me figure it out. Caleb looked at her, then at Emma, who was watching both of them with her two smart eyes. His daughter had always been able to cut through complexity and find the simple answer hidden underneath. Maybe she was right. Maybe the only way out was through. We'd need a plan, he said finally. A real one, not just walking into a police station and hoping for the best. I know. We'd need media, multiple outlets, public pressure, and protection. Because the second this goes live, every hired gun your father has is going to come at us hard. I know that too. Oh, so, yes, Shot. They stared at each other, and Caleb felt the weight of the decision settling over them like snow. This wasn't just about Evelyn anymore. It was about Emma, about the life they'd built here, about whether he was willing to risk everything for a woman he'd known less than a week. "Give me a day," he said. "Let me make some calls. See what resources we actually have." Evelyn nodded. "Okay, one day." He spent the afternoon on his phone, battery draining fast, calling everyone he knew who might have useful connections. His cousin in Denver, who worked in journalism. An old friend from the service who'd gone into private security. Even his ex-wife's brother, who he hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Most of the calls went nowhere, but a few planted seeds that might grow into something. By evening, he had the skeleton of a plan. It was risky, probably stupid, but it was better than waiting around to get caught. He explained it to Evelyn after Emma had fallen asleep, the two of them sitting by the fire with coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "My cousin knows a reporter at a major paper," Caleb said. "Investigative type. She's done pieces on corporate corruption before. If we can get her the evidence, she'll run with it." How do we get her the evidence without leading your father's people straight to it? "We don't go ourselves. We send someone they're not looking for." "Who?" "Me." Evelyn shook her head immediately. "No, absolutely not. It's the only way that makes sense. You're being watched." "I'm not. I can drive to Montana, get the evidence, bring it back. They won't even know I'm gone." "And what if they figure it out? What if they follow you? Then I deal with it." "With what? Your winning personality and a shotgun?" She stood up, agitated. "Caleb, these people are professionals. They'll eat you alive." "Maybe. But at least I'll be moving instead of sitting here waiting to die. I can't ask you to do this." "You're not asking. I'm offering." She looked at him for a long time, and he saw fear in her eyes. Not fear for herself, fear for him. It was a strange thing to see, that concern. He couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him like his life mattered to them. "When would you leave?" she asked finally. "Tomorrow morning, early, before they start watching the roads again. And Emma? Stays here with you. You keep her safe. I'll be back by nightfall." "What if you're not?" "Then you take her and run. Dale said his son has friends. You find them. You trust them. And you survive." "I don't want to survive without you." The words came out before she could stop them. She looked as surprised as he felt. "I mean, I don't want to be responsible for—" "I know what you meant." The moment stretched between them, charged and dangerous. Caleb stood up, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, how the firelight caught in her hair, how her eyes were the exact color of the Wyoming sky before a storm rolled in. He stepped back. "Get some sleep," he said roughly. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She nodded and moved toward Emma, curling up on the blankets next to his daughter. Caleb stayed by the fire, watching shadows dance across the walls and trying not to think about the fact that he'd just agreed to drive. 6 hours into hostile territory for a woman who would disappear from his life the moment this was over. Stupid, he was being stupid again. But he was going anyway. The alarm on his phone went off at 4 in the morning. Caleb silenced it and stood up, his back complaining about another night on the floor. Emma was still asleep, but Evelyn was awake, sitting up and watching him. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "Yeah, I do." He gathered supplies, the spare truck keys, cash he'd hidden for emergencies, the address of the storage unit she'd written on a scrap of paper. Evelyn walked him to the door, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. "Be careful," she said. "Always am." "That's a lie." "Yeah, it is." She smiled despite herself. Then, before he could process what was happening, she stepped forward and kissed his cheek. Quick, chaste, but it burned like a brand. "Come back," she said. He left without answering because he didn't know if he could keep that promise. The drive to Montana was long and cold and lonely. Caleb pushed the truck hard, eating up miles on empty highways while the sun rose behind him. He stopped once for gas and coffee, scanning the parking lot for anyone who looked wrong. Nobody. Just truckers and early morning commuters who barely glanced his way. The storage unit was in a small town called Whitefish, tucked between mountains that looked like his but weren't quite. He found the facility easily: chain link fence, rolling doors, security cameras that probably didn't work. He used the code Evelyn had given him and opened Unit 47. Inside was a single cardboard box. Caleb pulled it out and opened the top. Files. Dozens of them. Contracts, emails, financial records, all meticulously organized with labeled tabs. He didn't read any of it, didn't need to. The sheer volume was damning enough. He closed the box and carried it to the truck. He was backing out of the parking space when he saw the sedan. Black. Tinted windows. Parked across the street in a spot with clear sight lines to the storage facility entrance. Caleb's heart kicked into overdrive. They'd found it. Somehow they'd found it. He forced himself to drive normally, pulling out of the lot and heading toward the highway. The sedan followed. Not close, but not hiding either. They wanted him to know they were there. Caleb drove for 5 miles, his mind racing. If he led them back to the lodge, Emma and Evelyn were finished. But if he tried to lose them and failed, they'd just take the evidence and disappear him. He needed a third option. He pulled into a truck stop, big, busy, lots of witnesses. The sedan followed him in, parking 3 rows over. Caleb grabbed the box and walked inside, straight to the bathroom. He locked himself in a stall and pulled out his phone. Called his cousin in Denver. "Rick, I need a favor, a big one." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where you drive to Whitefish, Montana right now and pick up a package." "Caleb, what the hell are you mixed up in?" "Something way over my head. I'm being followed. I can't bring this package where it needs to go." "But you can. You get it to that reporter you know, the one who does corruption pieces." "And then what?" "Then you run the story and hope we all survive what comes next." There was a long pause, then, "Where are you?" "Truck stop off Route 93, big rig parking. I'll leave the package in a blue Chevy. Keys under the driver's side mat. You get here in 2 hours and it's yours." "What if they see me?" "They won't. They're watching me, not the truck." "Caleb, please. People I care about are going to die if this doesn't get out." Another pause. 2 hours. I'll be there. Awesome. Caleb hung up and sat on the toilet with his head in his hands, adrenaline making his fingers shake. This was it. The only play left. He waited 5 minutes, then walked back outside like nothing was wrong. The sedan was still there. He got in his truck, took the box, and set it on the passenger seat where they could see it. Then he drove around to the big rig parking section and parked between 2 semis. He climbed out, locked the box in the truck, and pocketed the keys. Then he walked back into the truck stop and ordered breakfast he didn't eat. The men from the sedan came inside 10 minutes later. 2 of them. Professional. Dangerous. They sat at a table across the restaurant and watched him. Caleb took his time, drank coffee, read a newspaper someone had left behind, checked his watch. After an hour, he paid his tab and walked outside. Got in his truck, drove away. The sedan followed. He led them on a chase that went nowhere. Side roads, small towns, circles that doubled back on themselves. Burning time. Burning gas. Praying that Rick made it to the truck stop and figured out which blue Chevy was his. The men stayed on him, patient and relentless. 4 hours later, his phone buzzed. Text from Rick. "Got it. On my way to Denver." "What the hell did you give me?" Caleb nearly sobbed with relief. He texted back, "Freedom. Get it to your reporter. Today." He waited 5 minutes, then pulled over on a scenic overlook and got out of the truck. The sedan pulled up behind him. Both men climbed out. Caleb leaned against his truck and waited for them to approach. "Long drive for nothing," the first man said. He was the same one from Caleb's porch 2 nights ago. Smooth voice, cold eyes. "Yeah, terrible traffic." "Where's the box?" "What box?" The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Don't play stupid. We watched you take it from the storage unit. We watched you put it in your truck. Now it's gone." "Where is it?" "I stopped for gas back in Missoula. Must have left it at the station." "You didn't stop in Missoula." "Sure I did, right after the truck stop. Memory's fuzzy, though. Long day." The second man moved forward, his hand going to his belt. The first man stopped him with a look, then turned back to Caleb. "You're protecting her, I understand that. Noble, even. But you're out of your depth. Whatever she promised you, whatever you think you're fighting for, it's not worth what's coming." Maybe not, but it's worth something. Is it worth your daughter? The words hit like a fist. Caleb went very still. Don't. Emma, right? 8 years old, goes to Lincoln Elementary. Rides bus 47. Sweet kid. Be a shame if something happened. Caleb had him by the throat before the sentence finished. Slammed him against the sedan hard enough to dent the metal. The second man drew a gun, but Caleb didn't care. His vision had gone red. You touch my daughter, I'll kill you. I'll hunt down everyone you know and I'll make you watch while I burn their lives to the ground. You understand me? The man's eyes went wide with genuine fear. He nodded as much as Caleb's grip would allow. Caleb held him there a moment longer, then let go, stepped back. The second man still had the gun pointed at him. Shoot me or put it away, Caleb said. But make a choice. The gun lowered. The first man straightened his coat, his professional mask cracked. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, it is. You just don't know it yet. Well, Caleb got in his truck and drove away, his hands shaking so hard he could barely grip the wheel. But he drove, and they didn't follow. By the time he made it back to Wyoming, the sun was setting and his phone was blowing up with texts from Evelyn asking if he was okay. He didn't answer, just drove straight to the lodge and parked behind the building where the truck couldn't be seen from the road. Emma was waiting on the porch. She launched herself at him the moment he stepped out, wrapping her arms around his waist. You're back, she said into his coat. I'm back. Evelyn was worried. She kept looking out the window. Was she? Yeah, she tried to hide it, but I could tell. He looked up and saw Evelyn standing in the doorway, her face a mixture of relief and something else he couldn't name. She didn't say anything, just watched him with those sharp blue eyes. Did you get it? She asked finally. Yeah, it's on its way to Denver. Should hit the news by tomorrow. And the men following you? They're aware we don't have it anymore. Did they hurt you? No, but they made it clear what the stakes are. She understood immediately. Her expression hardened. They threatened Emma. Doesn't matter. We're committed now. Whatever happens, happens. He walked past her into the lodge, Emma still attached to his side. He was exhausted, starving, running on fumes and adrenaline, and the knowledge that he'd just declared war on people who could crush him without breaking a sweat. But the box was gone. The evidence was in motion, and for the first time in years, Caleb felt like he was fighting for something that mattered. They ate dinner together, canned soup heated on the camp stove, crackers, water. Emma talked about the paper crane she'd made with Evelyn, proudly showing him a mobile she'd constructed out of fishing line and sticks. Caleb praised it and meant it. His daughter had created something beautiful out of nothing. Maybe there was a lesson there. After Emma fell asleep, Caleb and Evelyn sat by the fire again. It was becoming a ritual, these quiet hours when they didn't have to pretend everything was fine. Thank you, Evelyn said, for what you did today. Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this. I know, but still, you didn't have to risk yourself like that. Yes, I did. Why? He looked at her across the firelight. Because you were right yesterday. Emma deserves to see that some people choose doing the right thing, even when it costs them. And what about what you deserve? I deserve to protect my daughter. Everything else is negotiable. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then, when this is over, what will you do? Assuming we survive. Probably lose the lodge anyway. The bank doesn't care about moral victories. What if you didn't have to lose it? I told you, I don't want your money. Not my money, our money, yours and mine, partners. Caleb stared at her. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the business plan we made, the ideas that might actually work. I'm talking about me staying here and helping you build something real instead of running away to another hiding place. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. She leaned forward, you need capital and business expertise. I need a purpose and a life that belongs to me. We could do this. Together. You don't know anything about running a mountain lodge. I know about business, about marketing and finance and making rich people feel like they're buying authenticity. You know about this place, about what makes it special. Combined, we might actually succeed. Or we might fail spectacularly. Probably, but at least we'd fail trying something that matters. Caleb rubbed his face. The offer was insane. They barely knew each other. She was on the run from a powerful family. He was drowning in debt. Nothing about this made practical sense. But then again, nothing about the last 3 days had made sense, and they were still breathing. Let me think about it, he said. Fair enough. She stood up and moved toward the blankets where Emma slept. Halfway there, she stopped and turned back. Caleb? Yeah? I meant what I said earlier about not wanting to survive without you. That wasn't just guilt talking. She didn't wait for a response. Just lay down next to Emma and closed her eyes, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts and the crackling fire and the growing certainty that his life would never be the same. Outside, the wind picked up. A storm was coming. The storm hit 2 hours before dawn. Caleb woke to the sound of wind screaming against the lodge walls and snow hitting the windows like thrown gravel. He sat up and immediately checked Emma and Evelyn, both still asleep, huddled together under a pile of blankets. The fire had burned down to coals. He fed it more wood and watched the flames catch, while his mind worked through everything that could go wrong today. The story would break soon. Maybe it already had. And when it did, all hell would come down on them. He moved to the window and looked out into the darkness. Couldn't see more than 5 feet through the blowing snow. That was good and bad. Good because nobody could approach unseen. Bad because they wouldn't see trouble until it was right on top of them. He checked the shotgun, made sure it was loaded, and set it within reach. His phone buzzed. Text from Rick. Story went live 20 minutes ago. Front page, every major outlet picking it up. You better be ready for what comes next. Caleb stared at the message. Ready. What a joke. He'd never been less ready for anything in his life. He texted back, Thanks. I owe you. You owe me a lot more than thanks. Stay safe, cousin. Caleb set the phone down and looked at Evelyn. She was awake now, watching him from across the room. She'd heard the text alert. She knew. It's done, he said quietly. She nodded slowly. How long until they come? Hours maybe, could be minutes. What do? We wait. We watch. And if they come, we hold them off long enough for help to arrive. What help? I called Dale yesterday, told him what was happening. He's got people who can be here in 15 minutes if we need them. Will 15 minutes be enough? It'll have to be. Emma stirred and sat up, rubbing her eyes. Why is it so loud? Just a storm, sweetheart, Caleb said. Go back to sleep. I can't sleep when it's noisy. She looked between them and seemed to understand something unspoken was happening. Are the bad people coming? Caleb exchanged a glance with Evelyn. His daughter was too smart to lie to. Maybe. What happens if they do? Ah, shit. Then your dad and I handle it, Evelyn said before Caleb could answer. She moved over and sat next to Emma, putting an arm around her. And nothing bad is going to happen to you. I promise. You can't promise that, Emma said matter-of-factly. Nobody can promise that, but it's nice that you said it anyway. Evelyn looked stunned. Then she laughed, a short, surprised sound. You're absolutely right, but I'm going to try my hardest to make it true. How's that? Better? Emma leaned against her. I'm scared. Me too. Really? Really. But being scared is okay. It means you're paying attention. They sat like that while the storm raged and Caleb kept watch at the window. An hour passed. Then 2. Dawn came slowly, the sky shifting from black to gray without ever getting truly light. The snow kept falling, relentless and thick. His phone buzzed again. Another text. This one from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Hunter, we need to talk. There's a way out of this that doesn't end badly for everyone. Call me. Caleb showed it to Evelyn. She read it and shook her head. Don't call. It's a trap. Everything's a trap at this point. Then don't make it easier for them. He deleted the message without responding. 10 minutes later, another one came through. Your daughter is 8 years old. 3rd row, 4th seat on the school bus. Blue backpack with a broken zipper. We know everything about you, Mr. Hunter. Make the smart choice. Caleb felt ice settle in his chest. He showed Evelyn the message. Her face went white. They're trying to scare you, she said. It's working. What do you want to do? He looked at Emma, who was building something out of scraps of wood she'd found, lost in her own world. Everything he'd done for the last 8 years had been about keeping her safe, keeping her innocent, giving her a childhood that wasn't defined by the ugliness of the world. And now he'd brought that ugliness right to their door. I want to put you both in the truck and drive until we hit a border, Caleb said. Any border. Just go. They'd find us. You know they would. Yeah, I know. They were trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. And the walls were closing in. Around 9 o'clock, Emma announced she was hungry. Caleb made breakfast mechanically. Instant oatmeal, powdered milk, apple slices from a bag. They ate in silence while the storm continued its assault. Halfway through the meal, Evelyn's phone rang. She looked at the screen and went very still. It's my father. Don't answer it, Caleb said. I have to. If I don't, he'll assume the worst. Let him, Aunt. But she was already answering, putting it on speaker. Hello? Evelyn. The voice that came through was smooth, cultured, and cold as the storm outside. I'm disappointed. I thought we'd raised you better than this. You raised me to be obedient. There's a difference. And look where rebellion has gotten you. Hiding in the mountains with a bankrupt handyman, dragging his innocent child into your mess. Is this the freedom you wanted? It's better than the cage you built. That cage was safety, stability, everything you'll never have now that you've burned every bridge. I didn't burn them. I exposed them for the rotten wood they were. There was a pause. When her father spoke again, his voice had sharpened. That journalist you fed your little story to? She's already backtracking. Our lawyers are tearing apart every claim. By tomorrow, this will be yesterday's news and you'll be yesterday's heiress. I don't care. You should. Because the alternative is prosecution, grand theft, corporate espionage. We have enough evidence to put you in prison for 20 years. Is that what you want? To grow old in a cell while your mountain man moves on with his life? Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. You can't intimidate me anymore. I'm not intimidating you. I'm offering you a choice. Come home. Right now. Marry Marcus as planned. All of this goes away. The criminal charges, the media circus, even your friend and his daughter, they stay safe. Everyone wins. Everyone except me. You'll learn to be happy. People always do. That's the saddest thing you've ever said. No, darling. The saddest thing is that you actually believe you have a choice. The line went dead. Evelyn stood there holding the phone, her face expressionless. Then she threw it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. Emma jumped at the sound. He's coming, Evelyn said flatly. He's coming, and he's not going to stop until he has me. Then we don't let him have you, Caleb said. How? You heard him. He owns judges, lawyers, police. What are we supposed to do against that? We survive. That's what we do. We survive, and we don't give up, and we don't let them win. That's not a plan. It's the only plan we've got. Emma stood up, her small face set with determination. I'll help. Both adults looked at her. Caleb shook his head. Sweetheart, this isn't... I can help, Emma insisted. I'm little. I can hide better than you. I can watch from places they won't look. And I'm really quiet when I need to be. Dad, you always say we're a team. So let me be part of the team. Caleb looked at his daughter, 8 years old, and offering to fight battles she shouldn't even know existed. He wanted to wrap her in cotton and hide her from everything ugly in the world. But the world had found them anyway. Okay, he said. You're part of the team, but you listen to every word I say. No arguments, no improvising. You do exactly what I tell you. Understood? Emma nodded solemnly. Understood. They spent the next hour preparing. Caleb showed Emma the crawl space under the floor where she could hide if things went bad. Evelyn found anything that could be used as a weapon. Fire poker, kitchen knives, a length of chain. It was pathetic compared to what was probably coming for them, but it was something. Around noon, the storm finally broke. The wind died down and the snow stopped, leaving everything buried under 2 feet of white silence. Caleb stood at the window and watched the tree line. Nothing moved. Maybe they won't come, Emma said hopefully. They'll come. How do you know? Because people like Evelyn's father don't lose, and right now, he's losing. He'll do anything to change that. Los ti osbat bosta. As if on cue, Caleb saw it, movement through the trees, dark shapes moving in formation, professional and coordinated. 4 of them, maybe more. They're here, he said quietly. Evelyn pulled Emma close. How many? Enough. He grabbed the shotgun and moved to the door. His heart was hammering, but his hands were steady. This was it. Everything had been leading to this moment. The shapes emerged from the trees. 5 men, all armed, all moving with military precision. They spread out, surrounding the lodge. The one in front raised a hand and they stopped, maybe 50 yards out. Then the front door exploded inward, not from outside, from charges they'd set while Caleb was distracted watching the tree line. The blast threw him backward, his ears ringing, smoke filling the room. He heard Emma screaming and Evelyn shouting and boots hitting the floor as men poured through the opening. Caleb fired the shotgun blindly. Someone cursed. He scrambled to his feet, trying to see through the smoke. A shape lunged at him, and he swung the shotgun like a club, connecting with something that felt like bone. The shape went down. "Emma, run!" He couldn't see her, couldn't see anything. Just smoke and shadows and the sound of Emma crying. Arms grabbed him from behind, strong, professional. He fought like a wild animal, all technique abandoned, pure survival instinct taking over. Threw an elbow that connected with a jaw, stomped on an instep, twisted free. The smoke was clearing. He saw Evelyn on the ground, a man standing over her with a gun pointed at her head. Saw Emma trying to crawl toward the hiding spot he'd shown her. Saw another man moving to intercept his daughter. Caleb didn't think, just moved. Launched himself at the man going for Emma, hitting him like a linebacker. They crashed through the plastic sheeting covering a window and fell into the snow outside, rolling, punching, trying to hurt each other. Caleb's vision narrowed to this one fight, this one enemy between him and his daughter. He got on top and started hitting. The man blocked some blows, but not all. Blood appeared. Whose? Caleb didn't know. Didn't care. Then something hard pressed against the back of his skull. A gun. "Enough," a voice said. The man from his porch. The smooth one. "Or I put a bullet in your head right here." Caleb froze. The man beneath him scrambled away, coughing blood. Rough hands pulled Caleb to his feet, zip-tied his wrists behind his back. They dragged him back inside. The lodge was destroyed. The front door hung in splinters. Smoke damage blackened the walls. Evelyn sat on the floor with her hands bound, blood running from a cut above her eye. Emma huddled next to her, crying but unhurt. Relief nearly buckled Caleb's knees. Emma was okay. She was okay. The smooth man walked over to Evelyn and crouched down, his expression almost sympathetic. "This could have been so much easier." "Nothing with my father is ever easy," Evelyn said. "True. But at least now it's over." He stood and gestured to his team. "Get her up. We're leaving." They pulled Evelyn to her feet. She didn't fight. Just looked at Caleb with eyes that held regret and resignation and something that might have been love. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't apologize. Not for this." "Touching," the smooth man said. "But time to go. Mr. Hunter, you and your daughter are free to leave. This was never about you. Just stay out of our way, and nobody else gets hurt." "You're lying," Caleb said. "I'm really not. You're a loose end, but not an important one. We got what we came for." He nodded to his men. They started moving Evelyn toward the destroyed door. Emma suddenly broke away and threw herself at Evelyn, wrapping her arms around her waist. "Don't go! Please don't go! Emma, I have to." "No, you said you wouldn't leave. You promised." "Sweetheart, I'm sorry, One of the men reached down to pull Emma away. She kicked him hard in the shin. He swore and grabbed her arm rougher than necessary. Emma yelped in pain, and something in Caleb snapped. He charged forward, hands still bound behind his back, using his body as a weapon. Hit the man holding Emma with his shoulder, driving him into the wall. Someone grabbed Caleb from behind, but he was beyond caring, beyond thinking. They were hurting his daughter. That was all that mattered. Gunshots rang out, but they didn't come from inside the lodge. They came from outside. Confused shouting, more shots. The men holding Caleb let go and rushed toward the door, weapons raised. Through the opening, Caleb saw trucks, multiple trucks, blocking the access road. Men pouring out, Dale's men, the neighbors he'd called. They'd come. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. The security contractors were professionals, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. 2 of them went down immediately. The others retreated behind whatever cover they could find. The smooth man grabbed Evelyn and dragged her toward a back window, using her as a shield. Caleb rolled to his feet, hands still bound, and charged after them. saw the man climbing through the window, pulling Evelyn behind him. Caleb hit the window frame hard, using his weight to knock them both off balance. They fell outside into the snow. Evelyn scrambled away. The smooth man raised his gun. Evelyn picked up a piece of broken lumber and swung it with everything she had. It connected with his arm. The gun went flying. He lunged at her and they went down, fighting in the snow. Caleb couldn't help with his hands tied. He ran back into the lodge looking for something sharp. Found a piece of shattered glass from the window. Tried to cut the zip tie, but his hands were shaking too badly and the angle was wrong. Here. Emma appeared beside him with a knife from their supplies. Hold still. She sawed at the plastic while more gunshots echoed outside. Finally, the tie broke. Caleb grabbed the knife and ran back outside. The smooth man had Evelyn pinned, his hands around her throat. She was clawing at his face, but he was too strong. Caleb hit him at full speed, driving the knife toward center mass without thinking. Without planning, pure animal protection. The blade caught the man in the shoulder. He screamed and rolled off Evelyn, clutching the wound. Caleb raised the knife again, but someone was shouting his name. Caleb, stand down, we got them. He looked up. Dale was there with 4 other men, all holding weapons. The security contractors were on the ground, hands visible, surrounded. It was over. Caleb dropped the knife and went to Evelyn. She was gasping for air, ugly purple marks already forming on her throat. He helped her sit up, checking her over for injuries. You okay? She nodded, couldn't speak yet. Her eyes found his and held them, scared, grateful, alive. Emma crashed into both of them, wrapping her arms around them. You're okay. You're both okay. We're okay, Caleb said, pulling his daughter close. He looked at Evelyn over Emma's head. We're all okay. The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later with half the county's deputies. Someone had called them when the shooting started. They took statements, arrested the security contractors, called ambulances for the wounded. The smooth man was loaded into one, still conscious, glaring at Evelyn like he could kill her with his eyes. She stared back at him without flinching. It's over, the sheriff said to Evelyn. With the story that broke this morning and what happened here today, your father's done. He'll spend the rest of his life fighting charges. What about me? Evelyn asked. He said he had evidence, corporate espionage. Evidence we'll argue was obtained under duress. You were fleeing an abusive situation. Any decent lawyer will shred his case. The sheriff paused. You'll need to testify, though, against him, against all of them. I will. Whatever it takes. After the sheriff left, Caleb, Evelyn, and Emma sat in the ruined lodge surrounded by destruction, exhausted and battered, but breathing. The morning sun finally broke through the clouds, sending pale light through the shattered windows. What now? Evelyn asked. Caleb looked around at the damage. Now we rebuild. The lodge? Everything. She smiled, tentative, hopeful. You really want a partner? I really want a partner. Emma tugged on Evelyn's sleeve. Does that mean you're staying? If your dad will have me. Emma looked at Caleb expectantly. He thought about everything they'd been through in the last 4 days. Thought about the fact that this woman had crashed into his life like a meteor and destroyed everything. Thought about how she'd fought beside him, trusted him, believed in him when he'd stopped believing in himself. Yeah, he said. We'll have you. Evelyn's smile widened into something genuine and unguarded. Then I'm staying. They spent the rest of the day dealing with investigators and insurance adjusters and the endless bureaucracy that followed disaster. Dale and his men stayed to help secure the property, patching the blown-out door with plywood, checking the structural integrity of the lodge. By evening, when everyone finally left, the 3 of them were alone again. I'm hungry, Emma announced. Can we have real food instead of camp food? What counts as real food? Caleb asked. Pizza with extra cheese. Pizza it is. They drove into town, the first time Evelyn had been off the property since the crash. She stared out the window at the mountains, the snow, the small town coming into view with its one stoplight and handful of shops. It's beautiful here, she said. It's small, Caleb said. No fancy restaurants, no shopping, no prison, she finished. No expectations, no scripts, just life. Just life, he agreed. They picked up pizza from the only place that delivered and drove back to the cabin, the original cabin, not the destroyed lodge. Inside, everything looked exactly as it had 4 days ago. Normal, safe, home. They ate on the floor in front of the fire, Emma between them, talking about everything and nothing. What they'd rebuild first. Whether Evelyn knew how to ski. If they could get a dog. Small, ordinary conversations that felt revolutionary after everything they'd survived. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep in her own bed for the first time in days, Caleb and Evelyn stood on the porch looking out at the stars. The storm had cleared completely, leaving the sky sharp and bright with cold. "Thank you," Evelyn said quietly. "For what?" "For not turning me in when you could have. For risking everything. For—" her voice caught. "For making me believe I deserved to be free. You always deserved it. You just needed to believe it yourself." She turned to face him. "I meant what I said before, about not wanting to survive without you. That wasn't just fear talking. It was the truth." Caleb looked at her. This woman who'd arrived in his life broken and running and had somehow become essential. "I'm just a guy with a broken-down lodge and more debt than sense." "You're more than that. You're the first person who ever saw me as human instead of a commodity. That's everything." They stood close enough that their breath mingled in the cold air. Close enough that Caleb could see the flecks of silver in her blue eyes. Close enough that he could feel the pull between them like gravity. "This is a bad idea," he said. "Probably. We barely know each other. I know you'd run into a burning building for me. I know you'd fight 5 armed men to protect your daughter. I know you're stubborn and proud and scared of failing, but you do it anyway. That's enough to start." "But start what?" "Something real." Caleb didn't answer with words. Just closed the distance between them and kissed her. Tentative at first, then deeper when she responded. Her hands came up to his face, cold fingers against his jaw. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "So that's a yes to the partnership?" Evelyn said. "That's a yes to everything." She smiled and kissed him again. And for the first time in as long as Caleb could remember, the future didn't look like something to survive. It looked like something to build. Together. The months that followed felt like learning to breathe again after spending years underwater. Not easy, not smooth, but necessary and real and worth every difficult breath. The legal battles dragged on longer than anyone expected. Evelyn spent weeks giving depositions, sitting across tables from lawyers who tried to paint her as ungrateful and unstable and vindictive. She sat through it all with her spine straight and her voice steady, telling the truth over and over until it became a weapon sharper than anything they could throw at her. Caleb went with her to every hearing, sitting in the back of courtrooms that smelled like old wood and anxiety, watching her refuse to break. Her father's empire crumbled slowly and then all at once. The exposed land deals opened investigations into dozens of other properties. Partners fled. Investors pulled out. Within 2 months, the Sinclair Hotel Group was bleeding money and credibility. Within 4, it was filing for bankruptcy protection. And through it all, Evelyn's father maintained his innocence with the kind of entitlement that assumed the world would eventually bend to his will because it always had before. But the world had changed, or maybe just Evelyn had. "How do you feel, Tien?" Caleb asked her the night the bankruptcy was announced. They were sitting on the porch of the cabin, Emma asleep inside, the mountain air cold and clean. "I don't know," Evelyn said. "I spent my whole life being told that empire was my identity, that without it, I'd be nothing. And now it's gone, and I'm still here, still breathing, still me." "You're more than you were." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally becoming who I was supposed to be all along." She leaned against him. "Does that sound crazy?" "No, it sounds like freedom." She smiled. "Yeah, it does." The lodge reconstruction started in earnest once the insurance money came through and the structural engineers signed off on the repairs. Caleb had expected to do most of the work himself, the way he always had, slowly, alone, carrying the weight, because he didn't trust anyone else to care as much as he did. But Evelyn had other ideas. She brought in contractors, real ones, with insurance and references and crews that showed up when they said they would. She negotiated prices with the kind of sharp efficiency that made grown men reconsider their quotes. And when Caleb balked at the cost, she showed him the business plan again, the one they'd written together in those early desperate days. and walked him through how the investment would pay for itself within 2 years if they did it right. "You have to spend money to make money," she said. "I don't have money to spend, but I do. That's what partners do. They fill in each other's gaps. I don't want to be in debt to you." She looked at him levelly. "This isn't debt. This is investment. There's a difference. Debt is what you owe someone who has power over you. Investment is what you build with someone who believes in the same future you do." He thought about that. "When did you get so smart about this stuff?" "I've always been smart about it. You just never met me when I was allowed to use my brain for something other than smiling at cameras." They worked side by side through the summer, Caleb teaching Evelyn how to swing a hammer without hitting her thumb, Evelyn teaching Caleb how to read a profit and loss statement without his eyes glazing over. Emma helped where she could, mostly by bringing them water and sandwiches and offering unsolicited opinions on paint colors. The lodge took shape slowly, rising from its damaged bones into something better than it had been before. Better because it wasn't just Caleb's dream anymore. It was theirs. By August, the main structure was complete. By September, they'd finished 6 guest rooms with handcrafted furniture and windows that framed the mountain views like living postcards. In October, they opened for a soft launch, just friends and family, testing systems, working out kinks. Dale came with his wife and pronounced the place spectacular. Rick drove up from Denver with the journalist who'd broken the Sinclair story, and they spent a weekend hiking and eating Caleb's cooking and writing a follow-up piece about second chances. The piece ran in November. Within a week, they were booked solid through Christmas. "We did it," Evelyn said, staring at the reservation system on her laptop like she couldn't quite believe it was real. "We did," Caleb agreed. "No, I mean we actually did it. Built something from nothing. Made it work." "You sound surprised." "I am surprised. I've spent 30 years watching my father throw money at problems and call it success. This is different. This is real." Emma wandered over and peered at the screen. "Are all those people really coming to stay with us?" "They really are," Evelyn said. "Cool. Do I have to be nice to all of them?" "Most of them," Caleb said. "We'll make exceptions for the really obnoxious ones." Emma grinned and went back to her homework. Caleb watched her and felt something unfold in his chest. Not quite happiness, because he'd learned that happiness was too fragile a word for what he felt. More like contentment, like finally arriving somewhere he was supposed to be. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Caleb and Evelyn stood in the main room of the lodge and just looked at it. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace they'd rebuilt by hand. The wood gleamed with fresh finish. The furniture they'd chosen together, comfortable but elegant, rustic but refined, filled the space with warmth. "You know what's funny?" Evelyn said. "What? I used to stay in places like this. 5-star resorts in Aspen and Tahoe and Switzerland. Places that cost $5,000 a night and felt completely empty. And now I'm running one. Except it doesn't feel empty. It feels like it matters. It does matter. Why? What's the difference between this and what my father built?" Caleb thought about it. "I think it's the difference between extraction and creation. Your father extracted value from places, took what he wanted and left nothing behind. We're trying to create something that gives back, that makes people feel like they're part of something instead of just consuming it. That's very philosophical for a guy who spent the morning unclogging a toilet. I contain multitudes." She laughed and kissed him, and he thought about how much had changed in less than a year. How a woman who'd crashed into his life terrified and running had become the person he couldn't imagine living without. How his daughter had gained not just a friend but something closer to a mother figure. How the lodge that had almost destroyed him had become the thing that saved them all. The first real guests arrived the weekend before Thanksgiving. A family from Chicago, parents, 2 teenage kids, a grandmother who complained about the stairs but loved the view. Caleb was nervous in a way he hadn't been since Emma was born. That same feeling of desperately wanting not to fail at something that mattered. But Evelyn was calm, professional. She checked them in with the kind of gracious efficiency that made them feel instantly welcome, showed them to their rooms, explained the hiking trails, and the nearby attractions, and the dinner options. Later, when the family was settled and Emma was helping in the kitchen, Evelyn found Caleb standing in the hallway looking anxious. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing, just what if they hate it?" "They won't. But what if they do?" "Then we learn from it and do better next time. That's how this works. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real and trying hard and actually caring whether people have a good experience." "When did you become so confident about all this?" She smiled. "Around the same time I stopped trying to be someone I wasn't." The family loved it. Loved the food, loved the trails, loved sitting by the fire at night drinking hot chocolate and playing board games Emma taught them. When they left, they booked another week for next summer and told Caleb they'd be recommending the place to everyone they knew. Word spread. By Christmas, they had a waiting list. The turning point came on a snowy evening in late December when Caleb was reviewing the year-end finances and realized they were actually profitable. Not by much. Margins in the hospitality business were thin, and they'd taken on debt to rebuild. But they were in the black. The lodge was working. The dream was real. He found Evelyn in the kitchen prepping for the next day's guests. She had flour in her hair and was swearing at a batch of rolls that weren't rising properly. "We made money," he said. She looked up. "What?" "This year, we actually made money. Not a lot, but enough to prove this isn't just charity or luck or me deluding myself. It's a real business." Evelyn set down the dough and wiped her hands on her apron. "How much did we make?" "After expenses and debt payments? About $8,000. "That's it? That's $8,000 more than I had last year. $8,000 more than I thought I'd ever see." He laughed, a little wildly. "We did it! We actually did it!" She crossed the kitchen and hugged him, getting flour all over his shirt. "We did, and next year we'll do even better." "How do you know?" "Because now we know it's possible, and that changes everything." They stood like that for a moment, holding each other in a kitchen that smelled like fresh bread and possibility. Emma walked in, saw them, and rolled her eyes with the long-suffering exasperation of a 9-year-old watching adults be embarrassing. "Are you guys done being mushy? Because the Hendersons want to know if we have more firewood." "We have firewood," Caleb said. "I'll take it up. And I'll finish these rolls," Evelyn said, "if they ever decide to cooperate." Emma looked at the dough skeptically. "Maybe you should let Dad do the baking." "Maybe you should do your homework," Evelyn countered. "I did my homework. I'm helping." "Then help by taking these cookies to the Hendersons while your dad delivers the wood." Tomter ist besorgnis. Emma grabbed the cookie plate and headed out, still muttering about adults being weird. Caleb watched her go and felt that same contentment settle over him again. This was what he'd been fighting for all along without knowing how to name it. Not just survival, not just keeping his head above water, but actually living, actually building something that mattered. On Christmas Eve, they hosted all the guests for dinner together. 3 families, 2 couples, and a solo traveler who'd booked the smallest room and turned out to be a writer looking for inspiration. Emma helped serve, wearing a dress Evelyn had bought her, and a smile that made Caleb's heart hurt with how much he loved her. They ate roasted chicken and winter vegetables and pies made from recipes Evelyn had learned from online videos because she'd never cooked before this year. After dinner, everyone gathered around the fireplace. Someone suggested Christmas carols. Someone else suggested stories instead. They ended up doing both, old songs and older stories, the kind of simple traditions that bound strangers into temporary community. Emma sat between Caleb and Evelyn, holding both their hands, radiant with happiness. Later, when the guests had gone to bed and Emma was asleep and Caleb and Evelyn were cleaning up the last of the dishes, he turned to her and said, "Marry me." She dropped the plate she was holding. It didn't break, landed in the soapy water with a splash, but she stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "What? Marry me. Be my partner in everything, not just business. Let me wake up every morning knowing you're choosing this, choosing us, choosing this life we built together. Caleb, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together less than a year, but I also know I don't want to spend another day pretending this is temporary." "You're not temporary. This isn't temporary, and I want to make that official." Evelyn was crying. Happy tears, he thought, hoped. "You're serious?" "I'm completely serious. I don't have anything to offer you. No money. My father's bankruptcy took everything that wasn't already tied up in legal fees. No family, no connections, just me. Just you is everything I want. She wiped her eyes and laughed. You're supposed to have a ring for this. I have a ring. It was my grandmother's. Emma helped me clean it up. He pulled it from his pocket. Simple gold band with a small diamond. Nothing fancy, but real and solid. It's not what you're used to. It's perfect. She held out her hand. Put it on. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit like it was meant to be there. Like everything that had happened over the past year, the crash, the fear, the fighting, the building had been leading to this moment. So is that a yes? He asked. That's a yes to everything. They got married in March, when the snow was melting and the mountains were coming back to life. Just a small ceremony at the lodge with Emma as flower girl and Dale as best man, and a handful of friends who'd helped them survive the worst and build something better. Evelyn wore a simple white dress she'd bought in town and looked more beautiful than she ever had in designer gowns and diamonds. Emma cried happy tears and made them promise there would be cake afterward. There was cake. There was dancing. There was laughter and warmth and the feeling that they'd all somehow stumbled into the life they were meant to be living. That night, after the guests had left and Emma had finally gone to bed still wearing her flower crown, Caleb and Evelyn stood on the porch of the lodge looking out at the stars. No regrets? Caleb asked. Not one. Even though you gave up billions of dollars for this? Gut. Especially because of that. She turned to face him. You want to know what I learned this year? Money doesn't buy freedom. It buys comfort and security and the illusion of control. But actual freedom, the kind where you wake up and choose your own life every single day, that only comes when you're brave enough to let go of everything that's supposed to define you and find out who you actually are underneath. And who are you? I'm Evelyn Hunter, wife, business partner, amateur bread baker, person who's still figuring it out but doesn't have to pretend anymore. She smiled. I'm free. Yeah, you are. They went inside and locked the door and climbed into bed in the room they'd built together in the lodge they'd saved together. Through the window, the mountains stood silent and eternal, witness to everything that had been lost and found and chosen in the year since a billionaire heiress crashed her car and stumbled into a life that finally felt like her own. The lodge continued to grow. By the second summer, they'd expanded to 10 rooms and hired 2 part-time staff members. By the third year, they were featured in a major travel magazine as one of the top family-friendly mountain retreats in Wyoming. The article talked about the authentic experience, the personal attention, the way guests felt like they were staying with family instead of checking into a hotel. It talked about Caleb's cooking and Evelyn's business savvy, and Emma's role as the unofficial ambassador who taught kids to fish and identify birds and navigate the trails. What the article couldn't mention, because these things don't translate to glossy magazine pages, was the harder truth underneath. That building something real required more than money and skill and good intentions. It required the willingness to fail and get up and try again. To fight with your partner about stupid things like paint colors and significant things like whether to expand too fast. To work 18-hour days and wonder if it was worth it, and then see the look on a guest's face when they said this place had saved their family vacation, and know that yes, it was worth every exhausted minute. It required being human, messy and imperfect and trying anyway. Emma grew up in the lodge, part owner in spirit if not on paper. She learned business by watching her father and Evelyn negotiate with suppliers. She learned hospitality by helping guests feel welcome. She learned resilience by seeing the adults in her life fall down and get back up and keep building. On her 13th birthday, Caleb and Evelyn sat her down and told her that when she turned 18, she'd have an ownership stake in the business if she wanted it. Not an obligation, a choice. Do you want it? Caleb asked. No pressure either way. Emma thought about it seriously, the way she approached everything. Will I have to wear a suit? Never, Evelyn said. And I can still go to college if I want? College is non-negotiable, Caleb said. Then yeah, I want it. This place is home. Why wouldn't I want to be part of it? Because you deserve options, Caleb didn't say. Because you should see the world and have adventures and not feel tied to your father's dream. But Emma was looking at them with absolute certainty, and he realized she was already having the adventure, already seeing the world through the eyes of every guest who came through their doors, already building her own dreams on the foundation they'd laid. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. 5 years after Evelyn crashed her car on a Wyoming mountain road, the three of them stood together on the porch of the lodge and looked out at everything they'd created. The building was full, every room booked, laughter and conversation drifting through the windows. The property was thriving, the forest thick and green, the mountain standing eternal behind them. "You know what's strange?" Evelyn said. "I used to think success meant being at the top, being powerful, being untouchable. Now I think it means being right here, in this moment, with you two, building something that outlasts us." "That's not strange," Emma said. "That's just being smart." Caleb laughed. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." She looked at both of them. "You guys taught me that the only things worth having are the things you build yourself. That money doesn't mean anything if you're not free. That family is who you choose, not who you're born to." "Did we teach you all that?" Evelyn asked. "Yeah, by living it. That's better than any lesson." They stood together as the sun set behind the mountains, three people who'd found each other in chaos and built something solid from the wreckage. Not a fairy tale, not a perfect story, but a real one, a human one. A story about choosing courage over comfort, love over obligation, freedom over the safety of familiar cages. Years later, when people asked Evelyn if she ever regretted leaving her fortune behind, she'd smile and say no. When they pressed, surely she must miss some of it, the luxury, the ease, the power. She'd shake her head and try to explain that you can't miss what was never really yours, that she'd traded a fortune she'd inherited for a life she'd earned, that the only wealth worth having was the kind you built with your own hands alongside people who loved you for who you actually were. Most people didn't understand. They nodded and smiled and went home to their own cages, comfortable and familiar and slowly suffocating. But some people, a few rare ones, heard what she was really saying. And sometimes those people would book a room at the lodge, looking for something they couldn't name. And sometimes they'd find it in the mountains, in the quiet, in the simple act of being seen as human instead of as a number or a role or a function. And that, more than any profit margin or 5-star review, made everything they'd survived worth surviving. Because at the end of the day, the only question that mattered was this: did you choose your life, or did your life choose you? Did you build something real, or did you just occupy space someone else designed? Did you have the courage to let go of everything you thought you were supposed to be and become who you actually were? Evelyn had been a billionaire heiress who owned nothing that mattered. Now she was a business owner, a wife, a mother figure, a woman who'd learned that the greatest fortune in the world wasn't money at all. It was waking up every morning and choosing, actively choosing, to build a life that felt like living instead of just surviving. And if that wasn't success, she didn't know what was. The lodge still stands on that Wyoming mountain, owned and operated by a family that understands what it means to start over. If you visit, you'll find excellent food and comfortable rooms and mountain views that make you remember why you fell in love with being alive in the first place. You'll find a woman who greets guests like old friends, and a man who cooks like he's feeding family, and a young woman who knows these mountains better than anyone. You'll find proof that sometimes the best things in life come from having everything taken away and discovering that you never needed it to begin with. You'll find home,